The great arena of Vanar stretched wide like a living mountain of stone and metal. Its walls shimmered with alien banners, each one glowing in strange colors that carried the pride of old noble houses. Above, the twin suns of the Empire burned brightly, pouring light down on thousands of spectators who shouted, sang, and waited for the battle to begin. The arena was a place where history was written in sweat and blood, and today it would carry a weight far beyond the games of war. At the center, a figure of grace and authority stepped forward. Princess Celira of the Vanar Empire stood tall, her silver armor gleaming, her crown shaped like wings of light. Her eyes carried the calm fire of someone who had already made her decision. When she raised her hand, the voices of thousands died down, silence washing over the crowd like a tide pulling back before a storm. Her voice rang out, clear and strong, reaching every corner of the arena. "Win this battle," she declared, "and you win me." For a moment, the entire world seemed to stop. The warriors, the nobles in their high seats, the common folk pressed shoulder to shoulder, even the guards along the walls. Every living soul froze in disbelief. The princess had spoken against tradition. She had offered herself as a prize. Gasps echoed, then murmurs, then shouts. Some cried that it was honor. Others whispered that it was madness. Yet no one dared deny the words that had been spoken. The challengers who had gathered in the arena looked at each other with new hunger in their eyes. Alien champions, towering and proud, straightened their backs and gripped their weapons tighter. Each came from a race bred for battle, each one with scars to prove it. But among them, standing out like a shadow among flames, was a human. Captain Marcus Hale stood quietly at the edge of the field. His armor was not ornate, only practical, a mixture of old earth alloys and borrowed alien plating. His face bore no expression of fear or excitement. Instead, his eyes studied the crowd, the princess and the warriors who now measured him as if he were nothing more than prey. Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, and many saw them as frail, short-lived, and unworthy of notice. To them, Marcus was a joke, a fragile creature placed here for amusement. Yet he did not shrink under their stares. Around him, the crowd began to jeer. Voices rose in cruel laughter. "The human? He will not last a breath," shouted one. "Better to let him fight a child," mocked another. Some of the alien warriors grinned, sharp teeth glinting. They looked forward to the sport of breaking the human before the eyes of the Empire, but Marcus only clenched his fists at his sides. His training on Earth had taught him patience. His years among the stars had taught him to listen and learn, to find strength where others saw weakness. He knew that one mistake in this arena would cost him his life, and perhaps far more than that. For this was not only a battle for survival, it was a stage that would shape the fate of his entire species. The princess turned her gaze toward Marcus. For an instant, their eyes met across the wide arena. Her expression did not waver, but in that silent connection, Marcus saw something unexpected. She was not simply playing a game of politics. There was a reason she had chosen this test, and perhaps even a reason she had chosen him. The weight of her words pressed on him. "Win, and you win me." Yet Marcus sensed it was more than her hand she was offering. It was a chance, perhaps the only chance, for humanity to stand equal among powers that thought them small. The Emperor had not yet spoken, but his shadow loomed high on the throne above, his gaze hidden beneath the golden visor of his crown. The nobles leaned forward, eager for blood. The soldiers tightened their ranks along the walls. The air was thick with expectation, the silence ready to break into thunder at the first strike of battle. Marcus adjusted the grip on the old blade strapped to his back. The weapon was not as advanced as the plasma rifles and energy spears carried by others, but it was his, a steel memory of Earth. The arena floor shimmered, beginning to shift, preparing to transform into the battlefield chosen by the machines. Jungle, desert, ice, it could become anything, and none of the warriors knew which terrain would appear. The unknown pressed down like another enemy. The human took a slow breath. He could hear his heart, steady despite the noise of the crowd. He thought of Earth, of the people who looked to the stars with hope and fear. He thought of every insult hurled at his kind, every dismissal, every doubt. Then he thought of the chance before him now. He would not waste it. As the crowd finally erupted into wild shouts, the first horn sounded. The battle for the princess, for honor, and perhaps for the future of an entire species, was about to begin, and in that charged moment the arena went quiet once more. as if the universe itself was waiting to see whether the fragile human could truly stand against empires. The horn faded, but its echo seemed to live in the air, carrying with it the weight of countless battles fought in the same arena. The ground beneath Marcus's boots trembled as the machines hidden under the floor came alive. Slowly, the arena shifted and reshaped itself. Stone melted into water, dirt rose into cliffs, and green vines stretched into the sky. Within moments, the flat field was gone, replaced by a wild jungle of thick trees, tangled roots, and shadows that whispered of danger. The crowd roared with excitement. Each shift of the battlefield was part of the spectacle, forcing warriors to adapt or fall. The alien champions drew themselves up proudly. To them, it did not matter if the ground was jungle, desert, or ice. They believed their power alone was enough. Marcus studied the terrain. His boots pressed into wet soil. The air was heavy and damp, carrying the smell of moss and leaves. He remembered training exercises back on Earth where soldiers had to move silently through thick forests. His kind had learned to survive by watching, listening, and adapting. He told himself this battlefield was no different. Across the clearing, the first champion stepped forward. He was tall, nearly twice Marcus's height, his skin armored like a beetle's shell. His forearms each carried a weapon, blades that glowed with a dull red heat. The alien raised his head, mandibles clicking as he laughed. "Human," he called out, "you should have stayed in the shadows of your weak world. Today you will learn what it means to face a true warrior." The crowd cheered at his words. Marcus gave no reply. Instead, he bent his knees slightly, his hand resting near the hilt of his blade. He knew taunts were meant to break focus, to make him charge blindly. He would not give that satisfaction. The signal was given. The duel had begun. The alien charged forward with a speed that surprised even Marcus, his forearms slashing in a deadly pattern. Marcus twisted aside, the heat of the blades passing close enough to sting his skin. He stumbled back into the roots of a tree, using the thick trunk as cover. The alien's strikes cut deep scars into the wood, but Marcus had already slipped to the other side. The crowd shouted with every swing, expecting to see the human fall quickly. But Marcus did not fight with the same rhythm as the alien. He did not match strength with strength. Instead, he waited, watching the movements carefully, noting the slight pause before the alien's left strike, the slower recovery of the lower arms. Patterns. Predictable, repeatable patterns. Humans, Marcus knew, had always been hunters of patterns. It was how they survived storms, wild beasts and enemies stronger than themselves. He waited again, dodging by inches until at last the alien's lower left arm left an opening. Marcus darted forward, his blade flashing in a clean arc. Steel met flesh, and for the first time, alien blood spilled onto the jungle floor. The crowd gasped. The champion hissed in fury, spinning with renewed rage. His upper arms rained blows faster than before, each one strong enough to split stone. Marcus could not meet them directly. He retreated deeper into the jungle, weaving between trees and roots. The alien followed, smashing through anything in his path. Marcus breathed heavily but kept moving. The jungle was his ally. Where the alien's size was power, it was also a weakness. Roots caught his feet, branches slowed his strikes. Marcus used his smaller frame to slip between obstacles, forcing his opponent to struggle. Step by step, the alien grew more reckless, more desperate to land a finishing blow. Finally, Marcus found his moment. He ducked under a wide swing and slid across wet soil, coming up behind the alien. With a sharp cry, he drove his blade into the gap beneath the armored shell, twisting hard. The champion roared in pain, staggering forward. The human pulled free, ready to strike again if needed, but the alien fell with a heavy crash, his weapons clattering uselessly to the ground. For a moment, silence reigned. The alien crowd had expected the human to fall quickly, to be nothing more than entertainment. Instead, he stood victorious, his chest heaving, his face streaked with sweat. Slowly, the silence broke into shouts, some of anger, some of disbelief, and just a few of respect. Up in the royal seats, Princess Celira watched with a calm smile. Her gamble had begun to show its shape. She leaned toward her advisor, who stared wide-eyed at the scene. "Do you see now?" she whispered. "They think him weak because he is human. But weakness can be turned into strength. He fights with his mind as much as his body." Her advisor frowned. "Your Highness, this is dangerous. If the human loses, the nobles will turn their anger on you." "Then I must believe he will not lose," she said softly. On the arena floor, Marcus pulled his blade free of the soil and raised it just slightly, not in triumph, but as a quiet promise to himself. This was only the first battle. Stronger foes waited. He could hear the next champion's heavy footsteps already approaching. He did not know how many duels he could survive, but he knew one thing clearly. He had come too far to fail now. The horn sounded again. The next fight was about to begin. The crowd had not settled when the floor of the arena began to shift again. The jungle slowly dissolved, its trees folding into the ground like shadows retreating at dawn. The air grew colder, sharper, and the soil turned white with frost. Within moments, the field became a frozen wasteland, jagged cliffs of ice stretching upward and a bitter wind whistling through the arena walls. The audience cheered at the transformation, eager to see the human struggle in such harsh terrain. Marcus steadied his breath, his warm air turning into mist before him. The cold bit through his armor, but he kept his eyes forward. He had survived jungles, deserts, and mountains during his years as a soldier, and he reminded himself that a battlefield was only as dangerous as the enemy standing across it. That enemy now stepped forward. The second champion was unlike the first. He was leaner, his body tall and flexible, with limbs like coils of steel. His pale skin reflected the ice around him, and his narrow eyes glowed with a faint blue light. Two blades curved like crescent moons hung from his hands, and he moved with a grace that made every step look like part of a dance. The champion did not speak, but the way he tilted his head carried a silent message of contempt. To him, Marcus was already defeated. The horn sounded sharp against the icy air. The duel had begun. The alien moved first, his speed shocking. He glided across the frozen ground with perfect balance, as though his body had been built for this terrain. Marcus barely raised his blade in time to block the first strike. The impact rang like metal on metal, and the force pushed him back across the ice. His boots slipped, almost sending him to the ground. The crowd laughed at the stumble, but Marcus quickly recovered. He crouched low, spreading his weight, and adjusted his stance. He knew this would not be a fight of brute strength. This was about speed, precision, and balance. The alien struck again, faster this time, each movement sharp and exact. Marcus blocked one strike, dodged the second, and felt the third cut across his shoulder. The pain burned, but he kept his focus. He could not outpace his opponent, but he could watch. He could learn. The pattern revealed itself slowly. The alien's strikes came in sets of 3, a rhythm hidden beneath the beauty of his movements. Slash high, slash low, then spin for a sweeping cut. Each time, the pattern repeated. The crowd might have seen only grace, but Marcus saw predictability. He let the alien press the attack, drawing him into confidence. Each strike brought Marcus closer to the cliffs of ice until his back was nearly against the wall. The alien lunged, certain of the kill, his blades flashing like silver lightning. At the last moment, Marcus dropped to his knees, sliding across the ice. The alien's strike cut only air. Marcus came up behind him and swung. His blade struck the champion's side, not deep enough to kill, but enough to draw blood. The crowd gasped again. The alien hissed, his calm mask breaking. He spun with fury, attacking faster, harder, his dance now fueled by rage. Marcus knew this was dangerous. Rage could make a fighter unpredictable, but it also made mistakes. He braced himself, each block sending vibrations through his arms. His body ached, his lungs burned with the cold air, but his mind stayed sharp. Finally, the mistake came. The alien slipped slightly on the ice, his spin too wide, his back exposed for just a breath of time. Marcus acted without hesitation. He stepped forward and drove his blade upward, striking under the alien's arm. The cry that followed was sharp and bitter, echoing through the frozen arena. The champion staggered, his weapons clattering to the ground. He fell to his knees, clutching his wound, then collapsed onto the cold surface. Silence held the arena once again. Twice now the human had done the impossible. Twice he had turned what seemed like certain defeat into victory. The silence broke into a storm of noise, some voices filled with rage, others with awe. Marcus stood still, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. His body ached from the cold and from the cuts he had taken, but he did not let himself falter. He looked up at the royal seats where Princess Celera sat watching him with steady eyes. She leaned forward slightly, as though speaking only to herself, though her words carried. Yes, this is why I chose him. Her father, the emperor, shifted on his throne. His golden visor revealed nothing, but his silence was heavy like a storm waiting to break. Marcus lowered his blade, the sound of the crowd crashing around him. He knew the hardest battle was yet to come. 2 victories had earned him no safety, only greater enemies. He could see the next champion waiting at the far side of the arena, taller, heavier, and far more dangerous than the others before him. The machines beneath the arena stirred again, ready to reshape the battlefield for the next trial. The cold wind still blew, but Marcus did not shiver. He had come this far, and he would not allow himself to stop now. The horn sounded once more, promising a fight that would test not only his skill but his very will to survive. The cold battlefield melted away as the arena shifted once more. The ice cliffs sank into the ground, streams of water racing back into hidden cracks. The air grew warmer, heavy with dust as sharp rocks rose from the earth. In moments the ground became a desert of broken stone, jagged peaks stretching toward the sky. Heat shimmered across the field, and the crowd leaned forward, eager to see the next duel. Marcus stood at the center, his blade still in hand. His body ached from the wounds of the last two battles. His shoulder burned where the alien's blade had cut him, and his legs carried the weight of exhaustion. Yet he did not bend. His breath steadied, his eyes lifted, and he prepared himself for whatever came next. Before the next champion entered, a pause stretched across the arena. The nobles whispered to each other, some furious, others quietly impressed. They had expected a human to fall quickly, not to claim two victories. To them, every moment Marcus remained standing was an insult to their pride. From the royal seat, Princess Celira rose. Her silver armor caught the light of the desert field, and her voice rang clearly across the arena.
"He has fought with honor," she said, her tone calm but unyielding.
"He has proven that strength is not found only in size or tradition. Strength is also in will, in the courage to rise again when others expect you to fall." Her words drew both cheers and anger from the crowd. Some shouted their agreement. Others cried that she was disgracing the empire. But Celira's gaze did not waver. She knew her declaration earlier had shaken the empire, and now her defense of the human sharpened that divide. When Marcus heard her voice, a strange steadiness filled him. It was not comfort exactly, but a reminder that someone believed in him. He had fought battles for survival before, but never with an audience this large, and never with the future of his people balanced on his shoulders. Knowing that the princess saw more in him than a frail human gave his resolve new weight. The nobles closest to the throne turned toward her. "Princess," one said sharply, "you put faith in a creature that does not deserve this place. He will not survive the next trial." "Perhaps," she replied softly. "But if he does, will you still call him undeserving?" The question silenced them, though their glares spoke their anger. Behind the scenes, Marcus was led briefly into a resting chamber before the third fight. Alien healers stood nearby, but they offered him no help. The rules were strict: no healing, no aid between duels. He sat on a stone bench, his blade across his lap, and let the silence press around him. His body longed for rest, but his mind refused to slow. A door opened, and Princess Celira entered. Her steps were light, yet her presence filled the chamber. Marcus looked up, surprised. "I didn't expect you here," he said quietly. "You fight not only for yourself," she answered. "You fight for me and for the meaning of my words. If you fall, my declaration will be nothing but a forgotten act of rebellion. If you win, everything changes." Marcus met her eyes. "Why me? You had countless warriors in your empire. Any of them could have stood here." She studied him for a moment before answering. "Because they are bound by their training. They move as they were taught, predictable and rigid. But you move differently. You fight with instinct, with a kind of freedom I have never seen. That is what this empire needs. That is what I need." Her words carried no softness of romance, only the hard truth of someone who had chosen him for a reason. Marcus nodded slowly. "Then I'll keep standing," he said. "As long as I can, I'll fight." For the first time, her expression softened just slightly. "Do not fight only for me," she told him. "Fight for what you believe in." Before he could answer, the horn sounded again, calling him back to the arena. She turned to leave, her silver armor glowing faintly in the torchlight. "Remember," she said at the doorway, "the Empire does not honor weakness. Show them that strength takes many forms." Marcus rose, his blade heavy in his hand, but his spirit steadier than before. He walked back into the light of the arena, the roar of the crowd rising like a storm. The desert battlefield stretched before him, jagged and cruel. At the far end, the next champion appeared, a massive figure covered in thick armor, his hammer large enough to crush stone in a single blow. The audience cheered wildly at the sight of him. This was General Krax, the undefeated warrior whose victories had built his name into legend. Every duel he had fought ended in the same way, with his opponent broken and silent on the ground. Marcus stared at him, the weight of the moment pressing down. This was no ordinary champion. This was the battle that could decide everything. He adjusted his grip on his blade, feeling the ache in his muscles, but also the quiet fire in his chest. The horn sounded once more. The ground trembled as General Krax began to move forward, his hammer raised, each step like thunder. The crowd's cheers shook the arena walls, but through the noise, Marcus heard only his own steady breath. He was tired. He was wounded, but he was human and he was still standing. The desert battlefield shook with each step of General Krax. His massive form was covered in dark armor that gleamed in the sun, and his hammer was taller than Marcus himself, the head of the weapon carved from a single block of black stone. Every movement of the giant was heavy and certain, the confidence of a warrior who had never known defeat. The crowd erupted with cheers as Krax raised the hammer and slammed it against the ground. The impact cracked the stone beneath his feet and sent a wave of dust into the air. It was his way of promising to end the duel quickly, of reminding all who watched that he was the champion of champions. Marcus stood opposite him, his blade in hand. Compared to Krax, he looked almost fragile, a small figure in worn armor facing a mountain of power. His body ached from the earlier fights, his wounds throbbing with each breath, but his eyes never left the giant. He knew this battle would not be won by strength. It had to be won by something else. By speed, by wit, by finding the single mistake that could bring even a giant to the ground. The horn sounded. Krax moved faster than expected, his huge body covering ground in powerful strides. The hammer came down with a roar, striking the earth where Marcus had stood only moments before. Stone shattered, leaving a deep crater. Marcus rolled aside, the force of the impact shaking his bones. He scrambled to his feet, his blade ready, but Krax was already swinging again. Each strike was like thunder, each swing carrying enough power to crush him instantly. Marcus dodged left, then right, feeling the hammer's wind rush past him, pulling at his balance. He could not block such attacks, his blade would snap in two. He had to stay out of reach to keep moving to wear the giant down. The crowd shouted with every blow, expecting the human to be flattened at any moment. But Marcus kept dodging, his movements sharp and quick. He ducked under a swing, climbed over a jagged rock and slid down the other side, forcing Krax to chase him across the uneven battlefield. Still, he could not keep running forever. His lungs burned, his legs screamed with fatigue, and sweat stung his eyes. He needed a plan. Marcus glanced at the terrain. The desert field was broken into cliffs and sharp ridges, cracks running deep into the ground. An idea formed. He remembered Earth's old tactics, how soldiers trapped larger foes by using the ground itself. He could not overpower Krax, but he could make the arena fight for him. He circled the general, forcing him toward one of the deep cracks. Krax laughed, a low rumble like grinding stone. "You run well, human, but running will not save you." He swung again and the hammer struck a ridge, shattering it into dust. The shock nearly threw Marcus off balance, but he steadied himself. Krax pressed forward, his hammer lifting high for another crushing blow. At that moment, Marcus darted, closer just enough to make the giant strike downward with full force. The hammer crashed into the ground, splitting the earth wider. Marcus slipped back quickly, avoiding the strike, but watching as the crack deepened beneath Krax's feet. The giant pulled his weapon free with ease, but Marcus saw the shift in his footing. The crack beneath him widened each time the hammer struck with full power. Marcus realized he had found his chance. He began to taunt Krax, circling, striking lightly at the edges of his armor. The blows did no damage, but they angered the general. Krax roared, swinging harder, faster, each strike shaking the battlefield. The crack spread wider, the ground beneath him trembling. Marcus kept dodging, forcing Krax to follow, never letting him slow down. Finally, the ground gave way. With him, one last mighty swing, Krax's hammer struck deep and the earth beneath him collapsed. The giant staggered, one foot sinking into the crack. For the first time, he faltered. Marcus seized the moment. With a shout, he rushed forward, climbing the giant's leg like a soldier scaling a wall. Krax tried to grab him, but his trapped foot slowed him. Marcus swung his blade with all the strength left in his arms, driving it into the gap between Krax's armor plates at the neck. The blade sank deep. Krax roared, thrashing, trying to pull Marcus away, but the human held on, twisting the blade further. The giant's strength faltered, his swings growing weaker. At last, with a final shudder, Krax collapsed onto the ground, his hammer falling from his hand. The arena fell silent. The unbeatable general, the warrior who had never known defeat, now lay still in the dust brought down by the human they had all mocked. For a long moment no one spoke. Then the silence shattered into chaos. Some shouted in outrage, demanding the fight be voided. Others cried out in awe, unable to believe what they had seen. And somewhere, deep in the crowd, voices began to cheer. Not for an alien champion, but for the human who had done the impossible. Marcus pulled his blade free and staggered back, his chest heaving, his body trembling from exhaustion. He raised the blade slightly, not in triumph, but as a sign that he still stood. From the royal seat, Princess Selira rose once more. Her voice carried through the noise. He has won. By the law of the arena, no voice may deny it. Humanity has proven its strength today. Her words silenced many, though the anger of the nobles still burned. The emperor remained seated, unmoving, his visor hiding his thoughts. But Marcus knew this was not the end. The duel was over, but the greater battle, the one fought in the shadows of power, was only beginning. For now, though, he had survived. He had faced the strongest warrior in the empire and lived to stand. And that alone changed everything. The sun had barely dipped below the horizon when the arena finally began to empty. Dust still hung in the air from the battle, and the echoes of the crowd's roars lingered in the stone walls. Marcus sat on a bench in a side chamber, his body aching, his hands trembling from exhaustion. His blade rested across his knees, still stained with the fight against General Krax. For the first time since arriving on this alien world, Marcus felt the weight of what he had done. He had defeated their strongest warrior, a general who had never known defeat. To the crowd it was history, to the nobles it was an insult, and to Marcus it was survival, but also something more. He had shown them what a human could do. The door creaked open, and Princess Selira entered with 2 guards behind her. Her presence carried both grace and tension. She moved closer, her eyes fixed on him. "You should not still be alive," she said softly, almost in disbelief. Marcus gave a tired smile. "I've heard that before." She tilted her head slightly. "Do you realize what you've done? The Empire will not forget this. Many will not forgive it." Marcus shrugged, though his muscles protested the motion. "I didn't come here to make friends. You promised victory meant something. I won. What happens now?" Her expression shifted, caught between admiration and worry. "By the law of the arena, you have earned the right to stand as my champion. That means no one can harm you openly. But the law of politics is not so simple. You have embarrassed noble families, and they will not rest, even my father." She stopped, choosing her words carefully. "He sees you as both a danger and a tool." Marcus leaned back, his eyes narrowing. "And what about you? Do you see me as a danger too?" Selira did not answer immediately. Instead, she stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "I see you as a spark. Something new, something unpredictable, and sparks can light a fire or burn down everything around them." Before Marcus could reply, the door burst open again. A tall figure in silver armor entered, his steps sharp and controlled. He was not a warrior like Krax, but carried the presence of someone who wielded authority. His eyes, cold and calculating, landed on Marcus. "Human," the man said, his voice firm. "I am Lord Venar, advisor to the Emperor. You fought well today, but you have disrupted balance. The people whisper your name, and that is dangerous. Do not mistake this for honor. You are still a foreigner, still weak in the eyes of those who rule." Marcus stood slowly, ignoring the pain in his legs. "If I was weak, your general would still be standing." The words hung heavy in the chamber. One of Selira's guards shifted nervously, but Venar's expression did not change. Instead, a small, cold smile touched his lips. Bold words. Enjoy your moment, human, because it will not last. The Emperor does not like surprises, and you are the greatest surprise of all. With that, he turned and left, the door slamming behind him. Marcus exhaled, the tension in the room sharp enough to cut. Friendly fellow, he muttered. Celira looked troubled. He is more dangerous than Krax ever was. Krax fought with honor. Vaynor uses poison, shadows, and whispers. Be careful, Marcus. He will move against you. That night, Marcus found no rest. Even with guards outside his chamber, every sound in the corridors made him reach for his blade. He knew the arena had been simple compared to what was coming. Steel and strength he understood, but politics, hidden hands, silent threats, this was a war fought in ways he had never trained for. The next day, the Empire gathered in the Great Hall, a towering structure of silver pillars and banners that reached toward the ceiling like streams of fire. The Emperor himself sat upon the throne, his figure wrapped in black and gold, his face hidden behind the shining visor. Marcus stood below with Celira beside him. Nobles filled the chamber, their eyes sharp and filled with disdain. Whispers spread like wind through leaves, every word carrying judgment. The Emperor finally spoke, his voice echoing like iron. The human has won. By the law of our empire, his victory cannot be denied. He stands as champion to my daughter. Yet this raises a question. What place does humanity claim in a galaxy ruled by strength? The hall fell silent. All eyes turned to Marcus. He felt the weight of their gaze like a physical force pressing down on him. His throat was dry, but he forced himself to speak. We claim no throne, Marcus said, his voice steady. We claim no empire. But today you saw what one human could do. Imagine what many could achieve. We are not here to bow. We are here to stand, to fight, and to prove that even the smallest spark can challenge the darkness. The words rippled through the hall. Some sneered, some muttered angrily, but others, surprisingly, looked thoughtful. The Emperor did not move, but his silence was louder than words. Celira glanced at Marcus, her eyes filled with something new, respect mixed with fear. She whispered, You have just declared humanity's place in their eyes. Now they will test you. All of them. Marcus nodded. He already knew. The battle with Krax had been only the first step. Now came the real fight. The one for survival, for respect, and perhaps for something greater. The palace felt different after Marcus's speech in the Great Hall. The halls that once echoed with whispers of curiosity now carried heavier silence. Everywhere he walked, he could feel eyes on him. Some filled with hatred, some with fear, and just a few with quiet respect. The days that followed were uneasy. Princess Celira met him often, speaking in hushed tones about the mood in the Empire. Your words have stirred something, she admitted. Many of the younger warriors speak of you with admiration. But the older nobles, they see you as a threat to their order. Marcus cleaned his blade as he listened, running a cloth along the steel. Order is just a word for comfort, he replied. And comfort is what they're afraid of losing. She studied him with eyes that carried both concern and curiosity. You're not like them, and you never will be. That may save you. Or doom you. One evening a summons came. The Emperor requested Marcus's presence in the throne chamber. No reason was given. Celira's face grew pale when she heard. Be careful, she warned. My father never calls without purpose. Whatever happens, remember, you are still the victor of the arena. That law protects you, even if his will does not. The chamber was vast and dimly lit, the banners casting long shadows across the floor. The Emperor sat on his throne, silent as stone, his visor reflecting the light of the torches. Lord Vaynor stood nearby, his expression calm and unreadable. Marcus bowed slightly, though not too low. You called for me. The Emperor's voice rumbled through the chamber. You are bold, human. Too bold for your place. You have shaken the Empire's pride. Some see it as proof of humanity's strength. Others see it as insult. Tell me, Marcus of Earth, what do you see? Marcus stood tall, though the weight of the moment pressed on him. I see a chance. A chance for humanity to stand beside others, not beneath them. A chance for your people to learn that respect is not weakness. A long silence followed. Then the Emperor rose, each movement deliberate and heavy with authority. Respect, he repeated, as if testing the word. Do you think respect is won with one victory? Do you think you have proven enough to change centuries of rule? Marcus met his hidden gaze. Not enough to change the past. but maybe enough to change the future. Lord Vanar stepped forward, his tone sharp. Your Majesty, this human is dangerous. He inspires voices that should remain silent. He should be removed before his influence spreads further. The Emperor raised a hand, silencing him. Then he spoke again, his voice softer but no less commanding. Perhaps you are right, Vanar. Or perhaps the human's fire is what the Empire needs. Tell me, Marcus, if given the chance, would you fight not just for yourself but for this Empire, even when it is not yours? The question struck Marcus like a blade. He thought of Earth, of the people who had never even known this arena existed. He thought of the warriors who had laughed at him, the nobles who wanted him dead, and Salira who had given him a chance when no one else would. I would fight for what is right, Marcus answered at last. Not for crowns, not for thrones, for people. If this empire can be better, I'll fight for that. The Emperor's visor tilted slightly, as though studying him in a way no words could. Finally, he sat once more. Then you will have your chance. War stirs at the edge of our borders. If you survive it, perhaps your words will mean more. Until then, you remain under my watch. Champion to my daughter, yet still foreign to my throne. The audience was over. The Emperor dismissed him with a wave, and Marcus left the chamber with his heart heavy but steady. That night, as he walked through the palace gardens, he found Salira waiting. The moonlight touched her silver hair, making her look almost otherworldly. What did he say? She asked quickly. Marcus recounted the meeting, his voice quiet. When he finished, she smiled faintly, though her eyes were troubled. My father has given you both a chance and a warning. You stand at the edge of something greater now. You could lead your people into respect, or into ruin. Marcus sat beside her, the night air cool against his skin. It's strange, he said. Back home I was just a soldier. Here I've become a symbol, and symbols don't get to choose the battles they fight. Salira looked at him for a long time, then said softly, but they can choose how they fight them. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of distant winds filled the silence. Finally, Marcus stood looking up at the stars. He knew the path ahead would be filled with battles not fought with swords alone. It would test not only his strength but his resolve, his will, and his heart. The arena had been just the beginning. The real war, the war for respect, survival, and the future of humanity, was only beginning to unfold. And as Marcus stood in the alien night, the thought struck him with clarity. He had not just won a battle. He had started a story that could reshape the galaxy itself.